Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome all the way from just outside of Rome, I believe, or in the middle of Rome.
We're just like 15 minutes away from the Colosseum.
Okay, so it's close enough. It's close enough. So in Melbourne, that would be like inner city. So
yeah, exactly.
Deniero Bartolini, did I pronounce that correct?
Correct. 100%. I'm very happy you did, pronounce it right the first time.
Thank you. And it's great to have you on the podcast. You are the founder and CEO of The Remote CEO, a digital entrepreneur for close to 20 years, but also a podcaster yourself. And you're telling me just before we press record that you were a DJ and started a podcast when you were DJing, and then kept the whole technology, and you've just kept it up for the last 14 years. So, and my add, top 2% in global podcasts as well, which is a mean feat.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's impressive. That is impressive. So it's great to have you on the podcast, my friend.
Absolutely, my pleasure to be here.
And I must acknowledge you because we've had a couple of logistical hurdles to get to this point in terms of rescheduling and we were challenged. We were challenged, but no, really looking forward to this conversation because not only do you have a entrepreneurial background, you've got a corporate background, you've been in sales, been a sales leader. But now a remote CEO. So you're just saying before we press record that you spend pretty much 6 months of the year roughly in Italy and then 6 months in Canada, which is fantastic. So love to talk about all things remote, leadership in terms of how to manage teams that are remote, but also we'll start with a bit of your background in terms of I'm really interested to know what led you to become the remote CEO, because you did mention before we press record, you spent a bit of time in corporate and didn't want to do the 2 weeks annual leave. You thought that got to do something else, but love to know what sort of drove you to become an entrepreneur. Was it something that was already inside you, or was it something that kind of evolved over time?
All right. So both my parents were employees, and growing up, I remember this sentence that my mom used to tell me. It was, "Oh, every time you say something, it seems that you're trying to scam someone." And then looking back, all I was saying, it was like, "Hey, mom, we're on vacation in Miami. I find a lot of little, knickknacks that my friends in Rome would love. Why don't I buy a few and then bring them to class and sell them to my friends?" And so she never saw that entrepreneurial kind of spirit. She saw just a kid that wanted to scam his friends. And so all the way through college, or all the way through high school, I would say, I kind of repressed that sense of entrepreneurship. I was like, okay, all I need to do is just get a job and my parents will be happy. So now, fast forward to when I was 19 years old, I moved to Canada. I have dual citizenship. I started my university there, started then work there. And like you were saying, before we pressed record, I was telling you, it's not that I didn't like the idea of working all year round and only have 2 or 3 weeks off, which also is awful. But what really drove me to make that switch was the fact that I didn't want to sacrifice my relationships for money. All right. So the idea was, yes, I want a good job. Yes, I want to make money. I want to have that financial freedom that everybody talks about online. But I also don't want to be away from my parents, my cousins, my everybody, my friends. And so one day I decided, I said, I don't care how long it's going to take. I'm going to start a side hustle and I'll work remotely. It didn't even, come to mind that term before, but I'll work from my laptop, and so that I can decide where to be. And so, like I said before, it was not like one and done. It was like a process, obviously an overlap between full-time career, DJing, my my side hustle, then I obviously had to drop one of the three, and DJing was the first one that didn't really make logical sense at that point. And so I
Yeah,
transitioned into business, first SEO, then Amazon, then agency work, e-com, and then slowly into consulting.
yeah.
And now we are.
The remote CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and it went back to when you were a kid trying to hassle your friends. So you had but it's interesting. Do you reckon that was innate in you, or was there somebody in your environment that you had observed but perhaps didn't put the two and two together back then?
Back then, I'm an only child. Both parents worked as employees, like I said, and
Yeah.
my friends never really had that type of mentality.
Mm.
Uh, they liked cool things. I knew that every time, because again, dual citizenship, I used to go to Canada often. So then once you're in Canada, you go to other places. My father used to work for an airline, so we went a bunch of times to Australia, to like all other places in Asia. And so every time that I was away, I had this mentality of, hey, this is cool stuff. And
Mm.
so I did that for like 5, 6 years. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was a good idea to have some pocket money, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that I absorbed that from anybody. No, it was just like innate.
Wow. And you've in that little introduction, you've done a lot of stuff. You talked about SEO, getting into agencies, you've been in corporate, you've been in sales, you obviously a podcaster, but also you mentioned Amazon. So I know you're an Amazon bestseller, but you've also built an Amazon business as well.
Yeah, yeah, correct. So it started as a private label business because back then I was trying to optimize for automation and for not sales, basically, because I was doing sales full time. So I was like,
Yeah.
when I go home, I don't want to talk to anybody. And so I came across FBA and I was like, well, I just need to get good at calculating, things like inventory, margins, taxes, duties. And when I master that kind of thing, I can put someone on that project and they'll work on it and I'll have some passive income. So we still have a few products, but
Mhm.
back in the day, we really had scaled a couple of very interesting brand in the kitchenware space as private labels. And
Yep.
yeah, that worked out very well.
Nice, nice. And I'd love to delve into the remote CEO concept and how that originated. Was that something that just popped into your head one day, or is it something that was quite strategic?
It was a transition from my full service agency model and a consultancy that I had in mind. Agency worked very well from a monetary standpoint, but what it did, it created a lot of work for me. And obviously, every time that I onboarded a client, I was very happy. But I had seen this pattern of happiness as soon as I
Hmm.
closed the deal. Then, kind of message it. I had a couple two freelancers that helped me, but I was doing bulk of the work. And
Yeah.
so I would get very happy and then stressed out and anxious because I'm like, oh my God, now I have to figure out how to make this thing work. And so every client that I would add on to my roster became a headache. And I figured, well, what I need to do is still use my expertise, but possibly teach my expertise to someone else for a one-time fee, obviously a high ticket one-time fee.
Yep.
But when I am done with the training, then it's not my problem anymore, so to speak, right? So what we do now is exactly that. We come in, if someone can spare a few hours in your business, we can train them on how to get you agency results without spending agency money. If you don't have someone, we help you onboard a virtual assistant for $5 an hour, and then we train that person on how to get you agency results at a fraction of the cost.
Mm.
Works so well. We have these packages that, ranging between 5 to 15K. Our services last between 4 to 12 weeks, and we have two guarantees, but we are so, good at kind of going through the systems that people are happy, they're getting results. We empower their teams to retain profits because that's at the end of the day, the whole mission of the
Yep.
remote CEO. Like, don't waste money on agencies
Yeah.
and everybody's happy and I am super happy because I'm back into sales, which is now my primary role in the business. It's closing deals, and everybody else between recorded videos and the learning management tool, and obviously like Q&A calls 3 times a week, I don't have to do anything else. And that's really like why I created the remote CEO.
So you're now the chief. Well, not only the remote CEO, but the chief salesperson.
Correct, correct. I still have a couple of closers, but they say like 80% as good as you is 100% freaking good. They're still at 70%. So I'm like, I still want to be involved as much as possible. So that's where we're at.
So, Matt, I'd love to delve into the sales element, and whether that be with what you're doing today, but also maybe reflecting on your career in the corporate game when you were selling and being in sales leadership. What is it about sales that you love? And how would you, and if somebody was coming to you and say, hey, um, Deniero, what's sales about? What's your philosophy on sales?
Okay. So this two-part question. Let's start with the first one. What I like about sales. I don't know if it was the first or
Yeah.
second, but I that question. So I think that sales is one of those business skills that are the most transferable to other areas of your life. I've learned how to crunch numbers very well, but I don't find it useful when I go and pick up my daughter at school, or when I go to the store, or when I do something else. Same thing with other elements of leadership that may be a bit more quote unquote controlling. Like in a relationship, you don't want to sit down and make diagrams or something, right? But sales, it's something that really transfers very well into all areas of my life. And what I've noticed is the better I get at closing deals and to harness that power, because obviously you want to use it in a good way, in an ethical way, then you feel more confident in
Mm.
all other relationships. It doesn't matter if they're in sales, business, like personal life, fitness. And I find that it's inspiring to myself first, but also to other people. See that change from when they knew me before, when I used to, DJ and whatever, and 10 years later. So I think that's really what motivates me, that it's not only monetary gain once you get good at sales, but all areas of your life can benefit from it.
And you mentioned a very interesting word then, ethical, because it's interesting when I talk to sales teams, I often ask them the question, who here loves to be sold to? And it's interesting that the vast majority never put their hand up. And these are salespeople. But when I ask them the question, who likes to do the purchasing or who likes to be in control of a purchasing or a buying decision, they all put their hands up. And so I also come from a position of, when you're selling something, you've got to do it in an ethical way, which means I'm not going to take my product and retrofit it into what I think is a need that you have. You've got to be of service to that particular person or that particular organization to figure out, do they have a problem that needs to be solved? And do they want to solve that particular problem? And do they need to solve that problem? So I think ethical and sales, whilst most people not necessarily put those two words together, it needs to be together. So as you reflect back on your selling career, and certainly what you do now with remote CEO, um, how do you feel about ethical and sales being together?
So it's a very great question, because when I started, I'm not going to obviously mention any names of companies that I worked for, but there was one specific company that got so bad at a certain point where they asked us to power through some objections so that people would not go and look at our Google ratings, because we had 1.9 out of maybe 2,000 reviews.
Wow.
And I remember the feel of resistance that I was getting from getting on the phone. I was embarrassed. I felt guilty. I felt desperate at times, because I was not closing as many deals because I didn't feel confident. And so then when I had no money, I started sounding desperate. And so you started to get into this cycle,
Yeah.
and I hated it, and I had to leave. Then I started selling something else. I got into a partnership with Shopify. The product had launched just a couple of years before. It was growing very fast, very exciting offer and features, really helping small businesses. And I saw my career just jump from
Mm.
being a mediocre salesperson to getting into management roles as well, because now I started believing
Yeah.
into what I was saying. And that's exactly the mentality when you say, how do I feel between like pairing up ethical and sales? I think that if you want to have a consistent career, we're actually constantly making money, no matter what industry or no matter what the economical situation is, you need to believe in what you sell
Mm.
because there's nothing that can, be traded for that sense of commitment that you have to the product, to the client, and everything else. So I would start with saying that um, for for our sales in our business, we have fit calls. So we have a 15-minute call. We do about 50 of those every week. We spend a bit of time with everybody to figure out who's a good fit.
Yeah,
And then from good old Taki Moore, actually, and I don't know, like is he from Australia? I believe. Like,
he certainly
is
is.
it
He certainly
awesome?
is.
Okay, awesome. And so the idea is that we got very good at fit calls. So I only speak to a few people a week, but everybody that's on those calls, I know for a fact that if they don't buy, they're making a disservice. They're doing a disservice to their own business, to their own
Yeah,
families. The
yeah,
way that you said, and I know, Darren, you know that feeling of when you know that they need it. You don't even need to tell them straight up. You can just ask a couple of questions, let them sell themselves on it,
yeah.
and then just you take the order kind of thing, right? So obviously there's some resistance. We can talk about that, but the idea is that when I feel so motivated because they need it, it's a totally different conversation.
And it brings to into the frame here that sales ultimately is the ultimate. Well, it's the ultimate form of service, really, when you're thinking about it. So, and I know that what Taki does is in many cases gives the power to the person who he's talking to in terms of what is the next step based on what you've heard so far. What would you like to do next? What is the next logical step you'd like to take, etc., etc. Which, when you look at most salespeople, they think I could never put the power in the hands of the prospect because they're likely to say, "Well, I want to think about it. I want to just pontificate. And this is not the right fit for me." But it comes down to knowing your market really well and knowing how your product, your solution is going to fit into that market and what problem you're ultimately going to solve. Because I remember Taki years ago saying, if you can articulate a problem that your customer has better than they can, they will
You can
almost
kill.
attribute you as having a solution to that problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it goes down to exactly, you need to know your product, you need to know your niche, but even more so, mentioning another Australian, Sabri Subi, talks about this, where he says within your niche, there is the 20% of your niche that's the types of people. And so that's when we put together avatar sheets with, the name, the last name, the age, are they married, not married, what do they do? So the more
Mm,
information you have about your avatar, the better you can target, and obviously the better questions you can ask. Like you
mm.
said, what I find interesting is that people that are afraid to ask those types of questions always forget that the person asking the question is still in control of the conversation. So it's about asking the right questions at the right time.
Yeah,
And then you shouldn't fear the conversation going into a different direction if you've done all your homework, so to speak.
that's it. That's it. And if you've got a decent pipeline and a decent number of people to talk to, then you know what? Sometimes you make mistakes. Some days you'll forget to say something. Some days you'll forget to ask a question. But it's okay because there's more people to talk to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so from the remote CEO's perspective, um, you talk to business owners today and you help them with either VAs or setting up, a business and an organization that hopefully doesn't need them to be as hands-on. When you're thinking about, because you mentioned before economic times, and if you listen to some people around the world, they say, "Oh, we're going through some challenging times in 2024." In Australia, for example, it's all about the cost of living crisis because interest rates are going up and mortgage stress is going up, etc., etc. Thinking about that, because having a business and being in sales, and it's almost like when people allocate meaning to whoever's the president or the prime minister, and they say, "Oh, based on who's currently running the country, that has an impact on how we do things." What are some thoughts around, irrespective of what's happening in the environment, irrespective of what's happening in the political climate or the economical climate? What are some thoughts or some strategies that we can continue to be consistent and continue to offer value and be of value to, I guess, to the businesses that we serve, but also the people we serve?
It's a great question. You're asking it, I believe, to the right person, because my business since August 2023 is actually 3x on monthly and on monthly recurring revenue, despite everything that's happening around us. Now, here's what I've learned is that people over time, obviously, but people want three things. They either want to make money, or save time. You can't make time, so there's only save time. Now, if you're able to articulate a first message, so every sales process starts with a first message or call, whatever that is. So if you can articulate the end benefit that actually is obviously compelling for that audience, it doesn't matter what time of the year or what, the economy is like, political landscape, people are still attracted to those three things. Obviously, to a certain extent, save time is one of those that, like, if you already have the money, then you want to think about save time. So in order would be probably save time and make save money and make money, and then save time. So in harder times, I would say focus on an offer, even craft a different message to make your offer more compelling by showing that you're either saving money or making money. Obviously, don't give them too much of a time delay. Show them in the first message that you can make something happen, and then just instill curiosity. That's all we do. We do cold email outreach, about 2,500 messages per day to targeted cold leads, only in the US right now, but we've sold all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
We find that we still get those 1.5, 2% positive response rate when we have a message that instills curiosity. People don't want to be sold on a first message, right?
Yeah.
So yes, that first message sells the second message. Second message sells the 15-minute fit call. The fit call sells the 1 hour. And on the 1 hour, here I am trying to, make magic happen. But if you do it in a way that you still show that there is a big payoff at the end, it doesn't matter the economy. What obviously I'm going to say is that if you want to sell high ticket, don't go to a solopreneur that has like literally is like zero people around them, because if you're asking for a $10,000 to $15,000 investment, they'll likely tell you they don't have that money right away.
Yeah.
So so maybe increase your brand perception so that you can attract businesses between 5 to 20 employees if you don't feel ready to go with bigger corporations or medium-sized businesses. But the targeting when it comes to that, I would say any business between 5 and 20 employees, if you can give them an immediate payoff, and when I say immediate, within the first 3 months, they'll likely buy regardless of the economy.
Yeah. Because it's interesting when you go back to things like COVID, how many organizations flourished through COVID because they were riding the wave, and yet a lot of businesses really struggled. But what I found really interesting is a lot of businesses still found money to develop their people and to train their people because they knew that they had to find a way to continue to operate and get prepared for I guess, the back end of what COVID presented, which was an opportunity for many of them. And so they will find it. And people always say, if the need is big enough, you're always going to find a way to satisfy that need. The interesting thing I was intrigued by when you're talking was the curiosity piece. So for people listening, without saying, it's not about the spiel or the words that you use, but keeping it really simple, what would be an example of you mentioned you got 2,500 cold emails that are going out each day. When you're looking at trying to get a response to that, what are some things you think about that might pique curiosity? Is it directly linked to the make money, save time? Or is there something more specific that you target?
So let's quickly in like a minute, I'm gonna break down the anatomy of a cold email that works. So first thing we send, let's say on a number like a simple number, 100 emails. So if you send 100 emails, we want to make sure that as many people as possible open it, right? So don't worry about the copy yet. Let's look at the subject line. The subject line should not be salesy. It should not be stupid, because people now are very smart. They can recognize a cold email from a normal email. Things like thoughts, Darren, like, dude, it's 2024. Everybody has used that freaking like subject line, get on with the times. Okay. So come up with something that is not salesy. Again, curiosity based works very well. Obviously, don't put straight up clickbait, like still needs to be kind of related to what you sell or what you
Yeah.
offer. But again, very short, snappy, and curiosity based. So things that we would do is update, like I don't know, like purchasing cost update 2024. Done. That could be news. It looks almost like a news kind of
Yeah.
headline, right? So
Yeah.
people are going to click, and then in that, there's going to be obviously a part that talks about that update. Let's say, hey, I don't know, this magazine says that XYZ increase in purchasing costs in 2024. Now, what that entails for you. So we have, let's say, for example, developed a program that helps manufacturing plants save up to 7 figures by simply changing a couple of things in their buying process.
Mm.
Mind you, if I send you more info. Now, what happens here is we have obviously the curiosity-based headline. We
Yeah.
have that payoff. So obviously it needs to be a good payoff, right? So now we're
Yeah.
saying saving 7 figures because we're targeting, large manufacturing plants. But if you're targeting small law firms, you can say, hey, we can help you save, multiple 5 figures by doing this or whatever that is. And so the idea is that, again, here you want to be a bit more specific. So you're not going to say, I'm going to help you save money. The idea is, well, how much? And so if you do have some case studies, you don't want to mention them yet, but you can use that savings as the case study savings or increase in sales as the benchmark for your main email. And then don't tell them how. That's it. Don't tell them how yet. That's not the time. The time to say how you're going to do it is the second email. So
Yeah.
the first email, you say, mind you if I send you more info. Now you send an email like this to 100 people. Obviously, you want to test different length, different blah, blah, blah. People want to customize emails based on industry, based on whatever. So you feel free to do that if you want to. But the idea is that if you send an email like this, you get that response that Brian Tracy says it's called. Oh, really? And how do you do that? So when you write a first email, when you have your first cold call, if you have a big payoff, but you don't tell them how, the
Mm.
immediate natural response to your statement is no way. Like, oh, how are you going to do that? Right.
Yeah.
So even if they don't feel like they're super interested, but now they're just curious. And so it takes 2 seconds. And because your CTA, your call to action is short and snappy, mind you, if I send you more info, done. Like, yes, like you want to make sure that you have the least amount of resistance between them getting the info, but between now and then getting the info. So if you
Mm.
say like, oh, here's my calendar link, hop on a 15-minute call so they can tell you more. That's a long time. They need to go in, pick their time, find out if it's a good time, name, email address, phone number. Then they get to hop on a 15-minute call. What if they don't care about it? And so the idea is that we don't do that. We
Yeah.
send a second email. In the second email, we do everything else.
Nice. And look, people know that for most parts, as soon as you get on a call, there will be some sales element to it, but you've got to actually create that level of curiosity and a need to the point where maybe it's a fear of missing out that they just want to know a bit more.
Emotional triggers. We work with our clients on creating strong emotional triggers.
Yeah.
FOMO is one of them. Fear of missing out is huge, huge, huge. Obviously, running away from pain and chasing pleasure and all that great stuff works very well. We find many times that running away from pain is a stronger motivator than telling people, let's say if you have an email that says, hey, let's get on a call. I can help you make $1 million in 12 months. Yeah, buddy, that sounds great. I heard that a million times. But if I tell you, hey, in 2024, May 2024, there's an AI tool that can get you PR at a fraction of the cost, at 50 times less than the agency that you're currently using. Mind you, if I send you more info, now what happens here is this person is thinking, dude, I'm spending $8,000 a month on a PR agency, and you're telling me that I can actually, do it for $250 a month. So it's worth it because it's something that people hate the idea of spending money for nothing.
Mm.
And there's that fear of missing out. May 2024. It's July now. So it's
Mm.
new, it's exciting. If I had told them, hey, 2 years ago there was this thing, it's kind of whatever. I think probably already heard about it and I didn't like it back then. And so there's all these small things. Obviously, copywriting is an ongoing kind of challenge for
Yeah.
all marketers and salespeople. But these are kind of the main areas and pillars that we focus on.
And then when you get them on the call, you that's where the ethics come into it, right? Because part of it's going to be, hey, I don't know, because I've seen two of your emails, right? I jump on a call 15 minutes, and this is what Taki does really well. Says, hey, the purpose of this call is just to figure out whether there's a potential fit and whether I might be able to help you. If I can, I'll let you know what the next step potentially is. If I can't, I'll point you in the right direction, right? So it's almost
Sounds good.
like it's just removing yourself from the pressure of having to get this perfect outcome and having to close the deal on the spot.
No, we said that right away. I actually have this line that I've added to my to my 15-minute call that I give to my guys that take those phone calls, it says, literally says like this: listen, let's address the elephant in the room. Nobody likes to get emails. Matter of fact, my our CEO says this. They say it about me. They say our CEO always says about this. He never replies to cold emails, but when he does, it's because he's working on something important, and that email comes in and speaks about the same thing. And so obviously, does that match? So even something like this, infusing some, some humor in it, and kind of, again, breaking the ice so that they feel comfortable. So as soon as we said that, and then we just transition into what you said. Hey, by the way, this is not a sales call. We're just trying to see if there's a match. And we even add, if we're not a match, we'll let you know and we'll point you in the right direction. But if we think we're a match, I'm sure that you will be the one wanting to know about more. So
Yeah.
let me know at the end of the call if it's a good fit. And so 90% of the time, if they are a good fit, they're the ones telling me, okay, I want to know more. What's the
Yeah.
next step? And
Yeah.
so you know that you won.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's transition then into sales tips for, because I know there'll be people that are listening to this who they might be solopreneurs, they might be in small businesses, they might be the only salesperson in their team, and they're trying to get some traction. And when we talk about high ticket deals, and there's different people that have different interpretations. So what would you consider to be a high ticket value in terms of a sales number?
Yeah, so for if you're selling, obviously, if you're selling to larger corporations or that's a different story. But if we're selling to anywhere between solopreneurs to 20 employees, I would consider a high ticket anywhere between 8 to 15 or even higher, obviously. But starting for that mark, 5,000, you can still convince someone to put it all on a credit card.
Mm,
Once you get to 8K, they're going to give you some pushback. Hey, can I split it into payments? Blah,
yeah,
blah. So there's a couple other things that you get, nothing crazy. You just get we work with a company called Coaching Financing or something that help us kind of close deals and get cash advance for our clients so that they can pay up front and then they have those monthly payments with them. So there's several different ways that you can go about it. But yeah, we consider 8 to 15K the sweet spot for what we're currently doing.
cool. So for the person who has a product or a service that, let's just say it's 10 grand,
Yeah.
and they're selling into small medium enterprise, maybe 20, 30 seats. Um, a lot of business owners will think, hey, we've got the best product. Why doesn't this just sell itself? And they'll have a salesperson there that's trying to sell stuff. It's like, it's not as easy. It's not as easy as that.
Absolutely not. Um, yeah.
So
So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, so from your perspective in the work that you do, because you've got clients all over the world pretty much, um, and helping them sell to their marketplace, what are some tips that you work with them on in terms of this high ticket sales, that sales value? What are some tips that we can use to help us in that respect?
Find that I follow the rule of the more value you offer, the easier it is to break that resistance. And so we never lower our prices.
Mm,
So we've done it in the past. We've used it in my corporate career. I've used it several times. We used to have objection rebuttal, objection discount strategy. So we would get at the end of the conversation with a product that's sold for 30% of the original value sometimes. And that's okay if you're looking at just doing, like numbers. But if you want to increase your brand perception, I would say don't lower the price, just come up with more value for your clients. And so we have, for example, flash, either we have first call incentives, which basically we give double the amount of systems. We have 6 systems in total, 6 core systems. So if they buy on that one call, they get double the systems for the same price. So if we have a package, 2 systems for 8K, they will get 4 systems for 8K, but they need to buy right away. Another
yeah,
thing that we've tried to break that resistance is to have a $500 Stripe link that we send out. And so we tell them, hey, choose your package. Don't need to pay all up front. Here's a $500 Stripe link. Pay that. So now you can reserve your seat for the next 7 days. And then on the onboarding call, which generally takes place within those 7 days from the $500 deposit, you can pay the rest.
Mm.
And so the idea is that it's easier for us to get the foot in the door with the $500 deposit. Nobody's going to tell you I don't have $500 in my credit card right now.
Yeah.
Then they have 3, 4 days to figure it out. Listen, sometimes it happened where people, third day, the fourth day, before they make the main payment, they'll be like, oh, I actually had a problem, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? We've closed, I don't know, like 50 deals in the past like 6 months. I believe that only 2 people asked money back. And one person, we convinced them to actually leave the money and start in October. So like it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It works very well. So that's number one. And number two, as a consultancy, obviously we still are developing our business, our own business. And so
Yeah.
our strategy is that anytime that we develop a new tool, we make a template of it and then we put it into the learning portal. And when
Mm.
we go to the sales process and we are in closing and people are like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And so we always give them more value. Listen. And so the way that we do it is we tie a story to that product and that the thing that we're giving them. Let me give you an example. We do podcast bookings and podcast launch management as two of our systems. And so we obviously have a lot of podcasting material that we can offer, but we keep most of it as a bonus. And so when someone is on the call and they're like, hey, I want to start my own podcast, whatever, we show them the core product.
Yeah.
If they're still on the fence, we'll be like, listen, once your show scales to this many episodes, you're gonna start getting inbound applicants to be as guests. You're going
Yeah.
to need a way to sift through those guests and make sure that you're only speaking the right ones. And so we've developed and then we tell them a little story, like because we had the same problem and blah, 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 we developed this tool. It took us 2 years to tweak it and make sure that it's as good as it is right now. If you're willing to give us a shot on this call today, we can add this as a bonus. And we generally sell this alone for, I don't know, $2,000,
Yeah.
$1,000, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So again, showing the value. But this is actually, I'm stealing this from Alex Hormozy, which also is a great in our industry. The idea is that you want to give them something that implies that they're going to be successful. So that's why I said once your podcast scales to that level, you're going to need this. What
Mm.
that does is psychologically shows, hey, these guys are serious because they're already assuming that I'm going to get there. And
Yeah.
so it's more value, but also shows that we're committed to their success.
Yeah, and you're future pacing the client to say when your podcast gets to this level, when your organization gets to this level, you're going to need X, Y, Z. So yeah, your future pacing, but you're also planting them in their own future, which then
Absolutely.
is an ethical connection to you to say, well, you know what, I don't want to miss out on this because I'll be giving up on hopefully my own future, which I don't want to do.
Yeah, and well, we also have two guarantees. I didn't mention those, but those ones very well. We have a success guarantee and we have a money back guarantee at 120 days, provided that they've done 80% of the work. And obviously, they have a Trello board to measure all the
Mm.
videos and calls and everything else. And then we have a success guarantee, which means doesn't matter how long we think a program should take to function within a business. We know that things happen in our clients' businesses, and sometimes they need to take some time. And so we have a success guarantee, which means we're going to be working until we hit a threshold. Each system has its own threshold. So going back to being precise, we talked about being precise. People confused mind doesn't buy. So if
Mm.
someone tells me, this podcasting system sounds great, but I still don't understand how it can benefit me. And so we tell them, we don't stop working with you until you get at least 3 interviews on a monthly basis. And then
Yeah.
once you start in there, we know that we hit that threshold, the benchmark, and
Yep.
then we move on. So that really helps their peace of mind.
It's a really interesting concept because there's a lot of marketers out there will give a money back guarantee within a certain period of time, but the concept of, you know what, we will continue to work with you until you reach this is almost like, well, there's nothing to lose here because you,
That's
you
why
believe.
you No, I was saying that's why we give them both because some people initially a bit more price sensitive, they resonate a bit better with finally I get all my money back. But those businesses, they're not price conscious, but obviously if you're not price conscious, it means that you are getting momentum, that you're
Mm.
getting sales. You don't want to work with a dud. And so
No.
that's the kind of our guarantee. Hey, we're not duds. We're here to make you successful.
And Deniero, the other thing you mentioned, which was really important, I don't want to gloss over it, is adding more value and not discounting.
Mhm.
Now, if you went back to your, because I think you mentioned this when you're in your corporate career, and I know my own experience in corporate, there was often would be in a competitive tender situation, and the expectation was certainly if you're dealing with a procurement arm of an organization, they'd want the best price and all this stuff that goes with it. And often sales directors or chief financial officers would come in and give discounts, right? And then you get to the stage where you're that close and we're going to put our best and final offer in. But if we didn't win it, then all of a sudden we'd come back and discount it even further. And when I think about that, I'm thinking, well, hang on. If we believe in our solution, then we shouldn't have to discount, but we have to build the value of what we're offering. Now, obviously, the value is in the eye of the beholder. So, can you just talk a little bit about the power of not discounting and what it actually creates in terms of I guess, in an environment, not just for you as the service provider, but the level of, I guess, comfort or surety or certainty for the customer when we don't discount.
I want you to think about where you get discounts. If you go to a fancy restaurant, let's say, you walk in, they have like amazing service, white glove service, and whatnot. I don't think that you're gonna walk in and be like, "Hey, the bill is a bit too high. Can you give me a 30% off this caviar? Otherwise, I'm not eating." They'll kick you out. They're not even gonna answer. But if you go to the local fruit market or some other place, maybe your local grocery store, or something, and there is an like I don't know, they had an offer until Saturday, and then you come in on Sunday and you're like, oh, the offer is not here anymore. Oh, don't worry, man, just get still those 2 pounds of peaches for the same price as yesterday. That's okay. So the idea is that discounts are generally speaking tied to lower quote unquote ticket items. And so if you go the same example in Louis Vuitton store or somewhere else, you're probably not going to see a lot of sale signs anywhere, right? It's about keeping that brand perception as high as you can. Now, that does two things. First off, your current clients love the idea of working with someone that's so confident and a business that's so confident they don't need to do that. So they also respect you for not
Mm,
lowering the price. Second of all, if you are adding value, what you're doing is actually being more of service to them. Because if I give you two systems for the price of one, you're actually now, let's say, are getting on podcast, but also repurposing your podcast content on social media and getting community engagement as well. So your brand increases, your brand value increases. Yeah, you could have saved $2,500 if I give it to you half off the one system, but you wouldn't have all the social media management and community engagement that you're getting with a second system. And so
yeah,
we have these quick chats. It never really happens, but sometimes people be like, come on, man, you really no discount? And I'm like, hey, do you want $1,000 more in your bank account or this thing that's going to work for the lifetime of your business? It's going to help you increase
yeah.
brand awareness. So the idea is that these hard conversations are what really differentiate mediocre salespeople to high ticket or just good salespeople,
Mm,
because money is a sore topic for a lot of people. But like we said before, if you believe in what you do and you have value to offer, which is another kind of topic to kind of cover, like don't sell everything you have in your business in one offer, because
yeah,
then you literally have nothing else to offer, right?
that's it.
So we like to split it up into the 6 systems, and then we have our bonuses, and then we have everything else, and we have this visual representation on our slides. This is something that also Brian Tracy, but also many other people talk about. People good are okay listeners, but are great at reading and seeing things on the screen so that they can see it, they can take screenshots, they
Mm.
can remember the images. And so when we offer that value, we just make sure to actually show them on a screen. So I'm talking, they can see it on the screen. They'll be like, okay, it's a stupid objection. If if I say that I want a discount over double the systems, it would be stupid of me to say that. And so they generally move towards the sale without asking for for the discount.
And again, it comes back to this whole thing that if you're providing a valuable solution to a problem that they've actually said they've got and they want to solve and they need to solve, then it's a no-brainer because it makes it sound ridiculous.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, like you said before, people don't like to be sold, but they like to make the selling decision. And so if you give them all the right tools, provided that you're speaking to the right person,
Mm,
uh, they're going to most times make the right choice. You know what Taki Moore says, like if you're able to actually distinguish who's a good fit from not a good fit, you could have a 50, 60, 70% close rate on the 1 hour call because
Yeah,
you're only speaking to people that actually need you. And that's the
yeah.
beauty of doing sales in an ethical way.
That's it, because you're not attached to having to talk to a live person and therefore close that live person because that's the only person you got to talk to
Yeah,
today.
it's a whole new beast. Like lead generation, honestly, it's like the sales. What I always say to my team, talking about you were talking about Ferraris before. A good salesperson is like a Ferrari, but if the Ferrari doesn't have any gasoline in the tank, they ain't not gonna go anywhere. They're just gonna be waiting to roar, but no one's gonna hop in and drive the car. You know what I mean? So
That's
it's a
it.
waste. Definitely a waste.
Totally, totally. So, in fact, I was talking to somebody just before this particular podcast, and he was talking about lead generation and having good salespeople focusing on a lead gen and a pipeline because it takes pressure off having to close every single one because then you can be a little bit more selective and specific with who is a fit. And from a psychological point of view, you're no longer wedded to having to get a sale out because you're just having conversations and I'm being of service. Hey, if there's a fit, hey, I'd love to do work with you, but how does it sit with you? What would you like to do? And it's an unusual approach that salespeople that do this take, but it's very effective because you're literally putting the decision in the hands of the buyer to make that decision. And as long as you've covered it all and you've done all your pre-qualification, then more times than not, they're going to say, yeah, what's next?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Love it.
I think it's funny that people don't realize how marketing and sales has changed over the years. If you look at if you really want to get, wake up call and kind of being like, okay, I gotta get, up to speed with new sales techniques and whatnot. Look at commercials from the 70s, 60s, 80s. They used to just be like, they would just like blurb a bunch of like technical stuff and like features that their products have and like how this soap, cleans clothes better than the other because they have this, this, and this. And people be like, oh my gosh, people are smart now. They see
Yeah.
4,000 ads plus every single day. They talk to everybody that's trying to sell them, take the money. So they're not going to respond well to that, and you're always going to have the barrier. And when you're able to lower that barrier and actually be
Mm.
able to have a heart-to-heart conversation and let them make the choice, if you've done, like I said, everything the right
Mm.
way before, it's seamless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So love to talk a little bit about as the remote CEO, helping businesses set up fully remote. And I know that this is a challenge for a lot of businesses now because we're living in a digital economy. The world is as well, seems smaller because here we are. You're in Italy. I'm in cold Melbourne. It's
Yeah.
like it's probably 40 degrees where you are. It's about three
It was
degrees here.
42 degrees in the cards.
42 degrees.
Yeah.
So more and more businesses are working in a hybrid environment, but let's just take it to the extreme in terms of remote. Um, and I love your thoughts on the work that you do, particularly with businesses you're working with around the globe that have a team or a business that may not necessarily have everybody in the same physical location. And in some businesses, they may not actually have a physical location, but still a viable business. What are some thoughts and some tips, and are there any tools that people can use in order to be able to run an effective company business that is remote?
That's a great question. And I think there's different tiers for every business. We work with small businesses like solopreneurs and all the way to, like I said, 50 plus
Yeah.
employees. And so the tools range widely based on their needs. If you are bootstrapping or you already have 2 or 3 employees, but you're having a hard time, I would say you in your arsenal, you should only have like your phone with possibly even just WhatsApp. Some people always want to like Slack and all these things. Sure, you can get it. But if you do a WhatsApp group with your team, for example, if you have 2 or 3 virtual assistants, put them on WhatsApp. Everybody has WhatsApp. Then Zoom is a tool that we use often. And so
Hmm.
these are kind of like the things. Then we have Todoist, which is just another project management tool. Some people use Monday, Trello, whatever. We use Todoist internally. Some people use Notion, so that everybody knows what they're doing. We have, for example, one person that runs our meetings, where she is in at like 10 minutes before everybody else, sends a quick message to everybody asking for their agenda for the day. And then we have a morning huddle. I'm not a big proponent of meetings because I do like to do deep work and everything else, but I do believe that a strong sales team or a strong remote team in general, they need motivation every
Mm,
single day. I'm not in the office. I can't lead by example by being there. So what I do is I lead by example in the morning to show them that I'm energetic, to show them that
mm,
I'm focused, to remind them about our core values.
yeah.
I have the quick meeting, and then everybody goes and does their own things. At the end of the day, everybody needs to give me a detailed report of what they're done. We have this. I made a promise to my team. We used to use a time tracking tool back in the day. Some people didn't like it as much. They felt like they were too pressured. And they said, you know what? I also wouldn't like it. And so why don't we do this? I'm not going to use it, but I still want to make sure that you every day are giving me a super detailed report. And so we came up with this cool report. We have sales reports. We have um, fit calls reports. We have reports for video editing, reports for podcasting, and I get them all sent to me at the end of the day, basically. And so what I do the day after when I start my day, I spend about 5 minutes going through everybody's reports. I ask them to self-evaluate, meaning like I don't even want to go through all the KPIs because it's a lot of data. And so they know their benchmarks. And if they
Mm,
had a bad day, they know that if they tell me that a bad day, something happened, they give me even an excuse, I'm not going to be too upset or anything. But
yeah.
if I have to figure it out myself, then they know that that's not good. And so
Yeah.
it's part of a culture, right? So just be honest. Be
Mm,
honest because I'm not in front of you. Be honest because everybody needs your honesty. And the idea is that we tied everybody in one way, shape, or form to the to a revenue generating part of the business. And so we say, hey, if you drop the ball, you're not dropping it only for yourself. You're dropping it for Leah, for Marco, for Chris, for Jason, for Mark, for everybody. And
mm,
so if that's the case, now everybody feels like they're wearing the same jersey. Everybody, they feel like if they, get off the court, the pitch, now the team is missing a team member, right? And so that's our mentality when it comes to running a business remotely. One thing that I would add is that we do have some co-working calls sometimes.
okay.
I love working. I have a role that I hired some sort of a co-founder role where they're mainly on commission with some base, but they're really, benefiting from the growth of the business. And we do have co-working calls where we just hop on Zoom. We know what everybody needs to do. We take the audio off, obviously, and we just work. The idea is that if this person needs an answer right away, they can unmute and ask, and I can hear them. But also is for the accountability that also needs sometimes. Sometimes
Yeah.
people forget that CEOs are also and business owners are people as well. So one day you're more motivated and productive, some days less. And so when I find those days where I'm a bit off, I actually like that someone is there, be like, hey, dude, where did you go? You're supposed to finish
Mm,
the project by this certain time. And so we use that. But again, it's not a meeting, it's more of like accountability partnership while we're working on some deep work.
yeah. Got it. Got it. Some great advice there because I think more and more businesses, irrespective of size, are going to have a lot more remote workers. And in fact, a lot of businesses are now being established where, and certainly in Australia, there's a lot of companies that are downsizing their physical locations. And what that does is actually increases I guess, the talent pool as well, that they can get access to talent because we've got technology like all the apps you've spoken about and things like Zoom that you're only one click away from being able to talk to somebody face to face as if you're in the office, irrespective of the time zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So as we bring this to a close, just thinking ahead, 2024, the back end of 2024 into 2025, I often like to ask my guests, what's the opportunity? What's the opportunity that you're seeing, but also what's the challenge that business owners and salespeople, entrepreneurs need to be conscious of? Always taking a glass half full approach, of course, because that's what I'm always looking.
Yeah. But as a matter of fact, when you said the challenges and the opportunities, I don't know if it's just me, but when I hear those words, I find it almost as synonyms, even though they're not on a dictionary or in a thesaurus.
Yeah.
Because anytime that you conquer a challenge, you actually open up an opportunity. What I've found that works very well for us is that we never, ever, ever talk about times being hard, talk about things being unfavorable, the economy, like I said, politics. What we think is we're going to the gym. Now, I told you before, Like I go to the gym 5 days a week. Like I'm a fitness junkie. And the idea is that every time I'm at the gym, I'm not having the greatest time. Like I
Yeah.
know I'm suffering, I'm sweating, I'm tired, I'm cold, I'm hot. I don't know. I'm always not feeling that great. When I finish, I feel great and I thank myself. And so I've been doing this for years and years. Same thing with business. If you're entering a quote unquote hard time, it's your opportunity to strengthen your sales skills, your copywriting, your internal processes, to find new ways of selling, to offer more products, to train your staff to be more efficient with what they're doing, to interface better with your clients, upsell, indoctrinate them maybe into a mastermind process. And so the idea is that if we're always in a bull market and everybody is buying, we're just going to coast and surf the waves, right? And so the problem is that when the wave finishes, you just sink with your surf
Yeah.
board. And that's not what we want to do. We want to go from surfboard to a nice solid boat so that we doesn't matter what the weather is outside, we're still going to be fine. And
Yeah.
so that's what I was telling you. If you use this mentality in 2024, we already know that we want to develop 2 more systems by the end of the year. So we have 8 in total. So we can
Hmm.
bring our average order value from, I don't know, 12K to 15, 16K. We know that we want to launch a mastermind. These are all things, by the way, that if we were in a very strong bullish market with our sales technique that we developed, we would have gone 3, 4 times more to sales. And guess what? At that point, you don't have time to develop more
That's
things
it.
because you service everybody else. And now you're scrambling to make sure that you're not getting any refund requests and everything else. So life goes in season, business goes in season, economy goes in season. There's a season to reap and a season, a season to sow and a season to reap. What we do right now is obviously making sales, but also building
Mm.
and making sure that we're putting the seeds down, making sure that everything is working well, and when they will grow, hopefully when this economy is going to turn around a bit, guess what? We're going to be 5 times as strong as those that actually, well, those that give up, not going to be in the picture anymore. But those that actually coasted, they'll be like, oh, I can't invest in this and that, and they're just waiting it out. They're missing out on a huge opportunity.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny you say that because as you're talking, I'm thinking about COVID. I'm thinking about the GFC, the recession years and years ago. How many organizations took the opportunity to not double down and invest? They took the opportunity to cut to get rid of people, and the ones that double down and says, no, this is the time to invest because that will enable us to ride the crest of the wave when it turns around. We just got to get ourselves through this next part.
Absolutely. I want to leave you with like this topic. I want to give you one anecdote that I didn't mention on any podcast, but I think it's very funny because all my friends love this. And it's kind of, I don't know. It's weird. I'll let you judge. But the idea is that when COVID hits, I was actually during that time I was in Italy during those 3, 4 months. I went back to Canada. But the idea is that majority of my clients were in Canada, and I saw the lockdown firsthand in Italy, and then kind of the wave went a couple of weeks later to Canada. I had those 2 weeks to figure out what to do. I had a feeling everybody was like, "Oh, I don't know if it's going to turn into a pandemic." I was like, "Dude, like it's all over Europe already. Obviously, it's going to go to the United
Yeah.
States and Canada as well." So what I did is with my team, we sat down. We're like, we used to do back then, revenue share model for Google Ads. And so 10% of sales, no upfront cost. We sent a bunch of messages to people or to businesses that sold masks and everything else to hospitals. And so we got a bunch of contracts for 10% of sales. And all we needed to do by the time the recession hit, we had 5 clients all over the United States and Canada, selling in their local markets to everybody. We were getting 10%. So I literally had my best month that year was April. We had like, I don't know, 55, $60,000 in sales just the first couple of days, and then after that it started to go a bit lower. But the idea is that some people were freaking out, and we were
Mm.
like, hey, like there's obviously someone that's going to make money in this
Mm.
economy and in this situation. Who are they? It's obvious. It's going to be the healthcare industry and everybody that's uh around it. And one thing came to mind. You know the story about the gold rush in the United States, where the richest people were actually the ones selling the equipment, like Levi Strauss, like the
Mm.
pants, the equipment. Those
Yeah.
guys were making a bunch of money. All the people that went to look for gold, some people became rich, some people came back empty-ended, but like constantly, the people that were there making money consistently
Mm.
were the ones selling the equipment to those gold miners. And we kind of took that approach, and it worked out very well for us. That's an example of how you can turn lemons into lemonade.
Lemonade. Love it. Love it. Well, Deniero, absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For people that want to know more about you and what you do in terms of the remote CEO, but also get on hold, get on hold, get on hold, get on hold, get access to your podcast. Where's the best place for them to connect and learn more about you?
All right. So my name is Deniero. So Deniero and then B. So DenieroB.com is my personal brand website. You can find my podcast, my consulting business, my book, my Instagram, and my entire life is on that website. My contact info.
Brilliant. Awesome. I'll put that in the show notes, mate. So thank you so much. I'm glad we got this opportunity to chat because it's been a few false starts.
Oh my gosh. It's
I
fantastic.
hope the car is okay, and I hope you get to pick up your daughter this afternoon. So
Yes.
once again, thanks for being on the podcast, mate.
Absolutely, Darren. It was a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.